Greetings, welcome to the show. This is the overview, and I'm your host, Brother Mbogo. Today I'm going to take a look at transhumanism again. I think the last time I looked at transhumanism, I was focusing mainly on the technologies that they're thinking of or talking about incorporating, or the ways they're thinking about incorporating the technology into the human brain or the human body. But today I'm taking a look at the political ideology of transhumanism. Sounds a bit strange, but there are transhumanist political parties that are developing at the moment. So that's what I'll be focusing on today. So first of all, I'll be looking at two documents relating to transhumanism. One relating to this new ideology of transhumanism, and one is basically critiquing this new ideology or political way of thinking, or transhumanist political ideology, I should say. So I'll start by examining this transhumanist thought, the way they think, the ideas around what they have concerning how transhumanism should develop, or the incorporation of humans with technology, and how it's supposedly a good thing, or it's a natural progression from the human into a human that is more incorporated with technology. They perceive it in some ways as a natural evolution from the biological man to now the biotechnological man. So anyway, let's start looking at some of these excerpts. Transhumanist thought can be broken down into three main premises, each with an eminently political intent. Human beings in their natural state are obsolete and ought to be enhanced by technology, which then becomes a means of artificially extending the humanization process. So basically they're saying that humans, as the human being is at the moment, at its current stage, has reached a stage where it can't naturally progress anymore. How they come to this conclusion, I don't know, because humans have always evolved naturally, and we can't predict the stages at which humans will evolve and how humans will evolve. But they're saying that they know that humans can't evolve anymore. Anyway, modern man is an animal whose politics places his existence as a living being in question. In other words, transhumanists believe we have a duty to replace the category of human with a new creature, a post-sapien sapiens. We would potentially find ourselves, in zoological terms, at a moment of speciation, an extreme situation when a new species peels off and steps forward to join the animal kingdom. As I said, this is a natural process. Man can't predict if man is going to change sometime in the future or the present. That's not something we can predict. The different stages of the humans, we had the Neanderthals, you had different iterations of human have developed over the thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of years. But here they're basically saying that it's up to man now to create this new iteration of man through the use of technology. The goal is full hybridization between the post-human being and the machine, something that goes far beyond the human-machine interface. We know today, from interacting with cell phones and computers, for example, the mind-boggling image of a human-machine hybrid suggests a permanent integration, frequently talked up by one of transhuman's most prominent ideologists. I'm going to mention this. So this idea that the use of cell phones and computers is a form of man interfacing with machines, but they want to take it to another stage where they now fully integrate man with machines by connecting these technologies to the human body. So that's part of our thing. I'll continue dealing with this issue. This would have us transcend not only our humanity, but also what we might call the basic ideological matrix that underlies many other ideologies, human ideologies like liberalism, socialism, conservatism, although they're mainly Western ideas. These are mainly Western ideas. Namely humanism, which brings together all our ways of understanding ourselves as human beings at the center of the world and at the top of the species pyramid. All of this talks about human beings, humans being at the top of the animal kingdom, basically. But there's no mention of the spiritual aspect. What they're seeking to do with transhumanism is what is supposed to be done spiritually, this idea of man extending beyond just the physical being. They want to do it through technology and combining the humans with machines and so forth. While humanists believe that individuals can achieve moral growth through education and culture, although they missed out spiritual growth here, transhumanist ideology proffers an altogether new set of values, insisting on the necessity of transitioning to a post-human species capable of continuous self-enhancement by integrating new technological components. In a sense, technology obviates the need for moral, educational, or cultural effort, I should say. So there's no need for moral growth or educational growth. You can just add technology to the human being through the connection through circuits and prosthetics and things like that. So that's the basic understanding of the transhumanist thought. But in terms of their political ideology now, if we look at, that's what I'll be looking at next, the political ideology. That was just gaining an idea of what transhumanist thought is. Transhumanism has now reached the stage where it has become a major political project involving mass ideological dissemination. It is no longer a marginal interest confined by academic debates. So basically, the path that transhumanism is taking is going to affect how society operates. So they see this as a part of the formation of a new political ideology based around how man is going to be in the future. This combination of man with technology will create a different way in which we operate in society. The political goal is perfectly transparent. What we are talking about is nothing less than the creation of a new human being, therefore an entirely new society, just as past ideologies, communism, fascism, etc., appear to do in other ways. Of course, this transnational political movement contains pronounced ideological differences in terms of the technologies to be prioritized and the strategies to be pursued, particularly being. So these are basic what it's talking about is within the transhumanist ideology itself, there are different factions, different ways of thinking. So I'll be looking at I'm going to mention two of those different ways of thinking here. You have the techno-progressives who take a more egalitarian view of the path to the post-human condition, and the extropians or techno-libertarians who believe that refining and augmenting our capabilities through technology should be a matter of individual choice and financial means, even if that leads to acute inequality. So the idea that those who can afford will incorporate certain technologies into their brain or their body, and the more money you have, the more you can incorporate certain technologies. Or the more advanced, you may have a technology that does the same thing. For example, something that connects a technology that connects your mind to the cloud. But those who have more money will have better technology that can better connect their brain or whatever to the cloud, as opposed to the ordinary person. So you have class structures today. This will be another type of class structure based on the technology that you can afford to incorporate yourself with. If transhumanists have their way, state regulations and mediation mechanisms will be pitched into intractable struggle to contend with new constituent inequalities between humans still in their natural state, the so-called chimpanzees of the future, and the new technologically enhanced post-human species. Thus the humans presents a colossal challenge to the welfare state as a deeply meritocratic system designed to compensate as far as possible for social inequalities that are accident of birth. Not only that, it also challenges the ideas of democracy and the rule of law. So basically, those humans that are still normal humans will be seen as less than somebody that has all this technology incorporated into their system. You have now things like what they call hydrogels, which is it can be made from petrochemicals from the oil industry, or it can be made from plants and what. But it's basically the same substance that they incorporate certain metals and certain other things in, and they can inject it into your body, and it can self-organize. So you have these nanotechnology that you can inject into someone, and it can self-organize. It can go up to the brain and form a type of circuit, flexible circuit around the brain, and this technology can be used to send signals into the brain, or receive signals into the brain, or send signals from the brain of images that people are thinking about. So this is the way technology is being developed. So the transhuman will have all kinds of strange things injected into them, into the human, which will allow them to interface with technology outside of themselves. So this new development is something that will separate people who have the incorporated technology from the ordinary person who doesn't have this type of technology incorporated within them. But then you also have the prosthetics, the artificial eyes, the artificial arms, and so forth. In they're developing artificial organs, or ways of using a person's genetics to develop a kidney. So rather than getting a kidney from somebody else, you have a kidney that has grown from your own kidney to replace your kidney. Or they're also developing artificial organs. So a transhuman, it could be somebody with a completely artificial organ within their body, artificial liver, artificial kidney, even the heart. So this is the way the human bodies develop. Even aspects of the brain they're looking to make artificial. So this new transhuman will no longer be the organically developed human, but you couldn't even call it human anymore. Obviously their word for that would be transhuman. Anyway, let me continue. Let me see. That was a look at the political aspect of the so-called transhuman. Then you have what you call the corporate aspect, because with these new technologies that are being developed, the corporate sector seeks to make their own money or benefit financially from these new developments. So obviously they have an interest in promoting this transhumanist ideology, because it gives them a level of control over people, and also their profits will also be coming from the same technology. There's also talk of a fourth industrial revolution. The previous revolutions, such as water, the steam engine, electronics, and computing, and for them the next industrial revolution will be based on artificial intelligence and the development of this transhumanist worldview. Anyway, let me read what they say here. This is what the fourth industrial revolution has in store. NBIC, these are the four technologies which I will mention in a minute, will be undoubtedly mark a turning point in the evolution of capitalism, just like the steam engine first, the electricity in the second industrial revolution, then electronics and computing in the third industrial revolution. The endless stream of new products and procedures will be launched on the market. The transhumanist discourse will explain this explosion in supply by arguing that every new tool meets a specific need and fulfills a specific demand. In other words, transhumanism is the ideology that will be used to justify the expansion into new markets. So it's an ideology basically that will help the global corporatists to expand their production of certain products. And as I said, the expansion of these products will allow them a certain amount of control over the individual, not even the society as a whole, you could say, will be controlled, because they'll have access to people's brains directly, and they'll be able to have a level of control, even over the physical body that have been adopted, these prosthetics and whatever, which will be developed in such a way that, for example, you'll have an arm, artificial arm, that is controlled by a Bluetooth signal to the brain, to the arm, to guide how the arm moves, which means they have access, because that will also be somehow connected to a broader network, which means it will give them access basically to even your bodily movements, as well as what's going on in your mind. The next great shift in our lives will come from the emerging NBIC technologies, increasingly systematic collaborations between nanotechnologies, biotechnologies, information technologies, and cognitive science. I did a program about the brain being the battlefield of the future, that comes under cognitive science, and how they're going to use technology to control the brain in the future. It will lead to a new convergence, or great convergence. From here we will see increasingly sophisticated and pervasive integration between the infinitesimally small, that's the nanotechnology, intelligent machines, that is information technologies, and the study of the human brain. Okay, that's information technology. Then you have biotechnology, which is intelligent machines. The result will be an irrevocably diminished human, reduced to a zoological species like any other, perceived and mechanistically as being object created through technologies of selection, elimination, and manipulation. Basically, the normal human being will be seen as something just as you see any other zoological species, such as the lions, the bears, the animals that you would see in nature, out in the wild. Humans will be almost seen like that, compared to the new technologically advanced human being, or the new transhuman, who has been blended with technology. Transhumanist ideology is driven by certain factions within the state, above all, mighty multinational corporations that, it is fair to say, have the most to gain from seeing the NBIC revolution unfold without a hitch. So all these multinational corporations that will be manufacturing these technologies, they'll have the most to gain financially, in particular, in the breakout of these new technologies. As it's something that they want to incorporate in all humans around the world. That's what they'll promote it as. To be a more advanced human, wherever you are in the world, you'll need these technologies. And the ordinary humans will be competing with so-called, I wouldn't say it's superhuman, they'll be perceived as somehow superhuman. When you have a brain that can connect the cloud with all the information that the cloud has, so instead of relying on your own memory within your brain, you'll rely on the information streamed from whatever cloud services you're using. Because they have technologies that can imprint thoughts on the brain, which is, instead of you having your own thought, these technologies already exist. In which they can read what you think. They can read your brains, map your brain signals, so they can read your thoughts, and they can also send thoughts into your brain. So using this technology, they can send information from the cloud into your brain. So if you're thinking about something you want to not even remember it. If you may not even know how to do something, but the information on how to do this, perform this task, can be imported into your brain, rather than you having to learn how to do that skill. Or instead of you understanding something, the understanding will come through the cloud, rather than you learning how to understand something. Which means they can also import ideologies and ways of thinking into your brain. So instead of you thinking and developing an understanding of something, or a way of looking at the world yourself, that will be imported into your brain. And it may reach a stage where you don't realize what is your own thinking and what is being imported into your brain, which is their way of controlling, of course. Business magnates have been co-financing the Seasteading Institute since 2008 under the direct. This is one of the institutes that the corporatists have developed, I should say. Under the direction of Patrick Friedman, the institute is working on the construction of floating islands in international waters, so beyond the reach of any national jurisdiction. This is where they want to do their experiments on developing these transhumanist technologies, where experiments that might be prohibited in any state can be carried out on volunteers, experiments involving genetic and neurological intervention, for instance. In January 2017, the Seasteading Institute reached an agreement with the government of French Polynesia to build a 7,500 square meter prototype island off the coast of Tahiti with the status of a special economic zone. So they want to create areas to develop these technologies. If countries around the world are unwilling to allow such testing and experiments to take place, they'll create their own territories on which they can perform these experiments. And of course, there are those who have a different understanding. Obviously, the ordinary person will have a different understanding of this idea of transhumanism. Most people, I think, at the moment may not agree with it or will not agree with it. There are some who are scientifically minded or probably be happy to be test subjects for these types of technologies. You have people who are injured or anyway, who have lost body parts, who may be willing to be test subjects for new technologies. Then you have the people who just love technology anyway, a certain type of love for technology, who are likely to be guinea pigs or want to be guinea pigs for the testing of these technologies. I'm looking at one of the ideologists in the US. There's a new political party called the Transhumanist Party that has been formed. In fact, it has been there 10 years now, since 2016. So I'll be looking at the leader of this political party, and his ideas of what transhumanism is, or how it's supposedly better for mankind. So he was a presidential candidate for the newly formed Transhumanist Party. He has a thought. He's arguing that transhumanism as a thought experiment in a world without science and technology. So he's basically saying that the world without science and technology is a negative or a backward type of world. Anyway, I'll read what he says. So a world without science and technology, no vaccines, no planes, nothing. But vaccines, societies have used an equivalent to vaccines for many centuries, for a long time. In fact, if you could argue the vaccine against smallpox was given to the Americans, or revealed to the Americans by a slave in the 18th, I think it was in the 18th century. The process of inoculating somebody against smallpox was shown to them by a slave. Living in such a world that sounds unappealing, ergo technological progress is an inherent moral and social good. Well, you can argue that, technological process is not something that is moral. It may help society in some way, certain types of technology, but it's not an inherent moral and social good to go too far with technology. Yes, you can say technology can be useful, but as a moral imperative, no. In fact, it may become immoral to start incorporating technology with the humans. And you take that too far, that can be seen as something that is immoral, especially if it interferes with the spiritual process, the natural spiritual process and growth of the human. For further supporting evidence, he argued that we cannot argue against statistics, and that technology has changed the lives of all of us by extending life expectancies and giving us convenient and social networks helping us get around, and so on and so forth. Yes, technology helps people to get around, has created social networks, but civilizations has existed long before these technologies came into being, and they existed for thousands of years. So although these technologies in the current day can be useful in some ways, they are not something that is necessary for a society to exist or progress. According to Isvan, when it comes to intelligent discussion of technology in a society, it is an ideological matter of all technology versus no technology. And if you have the problem with the transhumanist goals, you are an anti-civilizational Luddite. Basically saying that if you don't accept or want increased technology in society, somehow you're being backward and you want to live a primitive life. But then again, maybe living a primitive life is better if it means that you're not connecting yourself to machines directly, not just using machines, but connecting yourself physically to a machine. 3 laws of transhumanism. Isvan is the leader of this transhumanist party. This is the 3 laws of transhumanism which he developed. A transhumanist must safeguard his own existence above all else. 2, a transhumanist must strive to achieve omnipotence as expediently as possible, so long as his actions do not conflict with the first law. A transhumanist must safeguard value in the universe, so long as his actions do not conflict with the first and second law. So a transhumanist must safeguard his own existence. Anybody must safeguard their own existence. And transhumanists must strive to achieve omnipotence. So the idea of achieving omnipotence is through the use of technology. Ideas such as transferring your mind onto a computer so that it will live forever, except when somebody switches off the computer, or there's a problem with the hard drive or the server, then you're going to be in problems. So their idea in fact, they want to replace natural spirituality with their own idea of using technology to do what spirituality is supposed to do. So their understanding of the universe itself then is very limited if they lack this understanding of the reality of a spiritual idea or greater consciousness. These are things which they don't understand, or they don't agree with. For them, there's no such thing as a greater consciousness. There's only the physical realm. So the only way to immortality is to transfer through mapping the brain using computers, transfer your mind onto a computer, not understanding that your mind is greater than this physical brain that we have. Anyway, let me continue. Science and technology are worthwhile pursuits, but it disguises Isvan's ideology, which promotes them as the socio-political values par excellence, as the cure to the majority of our problems, is as dangerous as it is delusional. The bottomless moral horror of the 20th century can be seen as the direct consequence of relying too heavily on these straightforward utopian solutions. Well, they're utopian in the sense that they're focusing on technology as a utopian direction, whereas there's an actual form of utopia which comes out of living a more spiritual life. But because of man's lack of spiritual development, we're focusing on the material realm or the physical world to solve all our problems, when there's a spiritual solution to every problem that we have. And this lady, Anna Arendt's recent words, she wrote a book basically called The Human Condition. She's also a critique of this transhumanist idea. The future man whom the scientists tell us will produce no more than 100 years, it will be produced in no more than 100 years, seems to be possessed by a rebellion against human existence, as it has been given a free gift from nowhere. which he wishes to exchange, as it were, for something he has made himself. There is no reason to doubt our abilities to accomplish such an exchange, just as there is no reason to doubt our present ability to destroy all of organic life. So basically, she's arguing here that man wants to replace God in this capacity to create, and even create the human, or create an artificial human. There are a number of technologies which they've developed, for example, to create artificial skin and create artificial organs. And even some are talking about the ability to create an artificial brain. So the ultimate aim basically is to be able to create an artificial human and blend that artificialness into the human, into the natural human, create a new form of being. The question is only whether we wish to use our new scientific knowledge in this direction, and this question cannot be decided by scientific means. It is a political question of the first order, and therefore can hardly be left to the decision of professional scientists or professional politicians. Well, under this technocracy, they see the technocrats as the ones that should be leading society, instead of politicians with their supposedly unclear views. They see people who are have a technical understanding of the world are the ones that are supposed to make the decisions. And ultimately, they'll be looking to AI to run society, because AI seems supposed to be more efficient and have all that capacity of understanding and information that humans don't have. So AI will have a better way, supposed to have a better way of running society. So anyway, that's the look at this transhumanist idea or thought process or political ideology, and where they want to take the world and where they want to take the human. So that's it for now.